What is going on, y'all? Site Perspectives, giofvcks. Now, in this video, I'm going to be discussing the reality of most American jobs. I feel like as you work and you get experience and you've been at a few places, you had a few different types of jobs, you will learn a lot of this on your own through your own lived experiences. So I'm talking about my lived experiences, and then of course I always will provide facts, data, information to back up what I'm talking about in the description box below. And as always recommended, I always recommend that you do your own research, do your own investigation, critically think. So let's get into it. American jobs. I'm speaking about American jobs because I live in the USA. I'm from the USA. I'm still in the USA. I've been working since I was 16, since 2009. So 12 years of working. And for me, the American job setup is just very abusive, no matter how you try to twist and turn it. You know, I've had various jobs over the course of my 12 years of working. You know, I've worked for a daycare center. That was my first job. I worked in the mall at GameStop. That was my second job. I worked as a waiter at a bowling alley. That was my third job. You know, I've got experience. My fourth job, I was doing human resources for Speedway, the gas station. I interned there, and I was paid in my internship. Then I had two unpaid internships where I was working at a radio station and then working for a congressman in their office, and both of those were unpaid. I worked in the high school setting, working with getting people prepared for secondary, college, and also if they wanted to go into the military or go into the workforce. I worked on the college campus doing programs around healthy sexuality, peer educating, consent, gender, sexuality, race, so many things, politics. I've had various jobs. I've been a grassroots organizer for nonprofits all the way to political parties. So I've done a little bit of everything, and I can honestly say throughout my 12 years of experience, American jobs are pretty much all the same. You know, it's essentially an abusive relationship. You know, when I look at American jobs and the way the environment and setup is, it's essentially like being in an abusive relationship. It's very much narcissistic. I mean, they do what they have to do to hook, line, and sinker you. You know, at the very beginning when you're applying to the job and they're providing the description, it's very vague for the most part. They don't really tell you what the job entails. They give you a very brief synopsis, summary, overview of what the job may or may not entail. And a lot of these American jobs, they don't tell you what the salaries are, you know, which that's done on purpose. Like obviously people should know what the wages and salaries are of the job, because if we had that information from the get-go, a lot of us wouldn't be applying to the jobs that we're applying, because like honestly, the minute you see that the salary or wages are low and stagnant and are not up to par with the cost of living, your experience, your education, etc., you would probably be like, yeah, I'm not going to waste my time submitting a resume, a cover letter, references, filling out this information on their website. You're not going to waste your time applying if we knew what the salary and wages were ahead of time. So you go through that, and then like a lot of American jobs want you to go through an ass-kissing ceremony where you're essentially going through anywhere from 2 to 4 different interviews to talk about the same shit but they might have a different variation of questions. So instead of, how would you handle this situation? What would you do in this situation? It's the same questions, but they, and they just have different people coming in to ask the questions. So you go through 2 to 4 interviews. And yes, in America, they literally have you do this ass-kissing session where it's like, you're supposed to be on your P's and Q's, your best behavior. I'm this remarkable, talented, goal-oriented, hardworking, dedicated individual. When obviously, because we live in a capitalist society, people are applying to jobs so they can earn a living, so they can pay bills. So like all of this ass kissing that we have to go through to prove our worthiness for a job that doesn't even pay living wages is really ridiculous. And this happens a lot in the American job sector. Whether you're doing for-profit, non-profit, public, private industry, doesn't matter. The mistreatment of the American workers and the exploitation that American employers do, it's abusive. And it's like, again, this is American jobs. So once you get through the ass kissing and you're blessed, privileged, lucky enough to persuade the people that, you're a good candidate for the position. Like I said, this could be anywhere between 2 to 4 interviews, and this could take months, right? Like, I have been through the interview process and with various jobs before, and it could take anywhere between 4 to 8 weeks after you've applied for the job and gone through the interview process to be offered the job. So like, it's really wild. Like, you spend all this time getting your resume and cover letter together, filling out the same information on different websites when you apply to the job, going through an additional 4 to 8 weeks of interviews, and then hopefully, like I said, you're blessed, you're privileged, you're lucky to be the chosen one, to be one of the candidates for the position. And then a lot of times with American jobs, even after all of that time and energy that has been put in with applying and interviewing, you're not done. You still have to go through a probation period. And the probation period can be anywhere from 30 days to 90 days. The longest typically being 90 days. And in that 90-day probation period, you're basically you're hired, but you're hired with stipulations. So like, if you don't perform the way they think you should be performing, you don't exceed their goals, their metrics, their standards, then you may or may not have a job, even though you've been there for 90 days. So, because a lot of these jobs, like I live in the state of Michigan. So in Michigan, we have a right to work state, which is basically your employer can fire you at will for any given reason. And they don't have to give you a reason for firing you. They can just let you go because it's a right to work state. So a lot of this 90-day shit is, again, after you went through all of that rigmarole with applying and cover letters and resumes and filling out paperwork and information on websites, and then 4 to 8 weeks of interviewing, now you have to do an additional anywhere from 30 to 90 days. So that's an additional 4 to 12 weeks of more ass kissing and jumping through hoops to prove that you are a solid worker. And a lot of times in that probation period, they withhold things, right? So like, you don't have health insurance because you're in that probation period. Even though you were hired to be salaried, you're not salaried yet until that probation period. You don't have access to any of the perks, the PTO, the paid time off, until that 90-day or until that probation period is over. So, this is how it is here. Again, it's like a shit show So when you think about it, now you're a good 5-6 months out since you applied to the job. And you're just now, if you're lucky, if you're privileged, if you're blessed, after 5 to 6 months of this shit, you're just now, because literally I applied to this job in January, February. The interview process didn't start until the end of March, early April. And I'm just now off probation period at the end of July, early August. So there you go. That's your 5 to 6 months, and you're just now getting into what are supposedly the perks. And, you know, you know me, I'm going to be very transparent, brutally honest about things, because that's the problem. You know, all of this lying, and because that's what these jobs do. You know, they all come in with a good gap. They all tell you how amazing it is to work at this place. Of course, they're going to speak highly of their place. They're trying to hook, line, and sinker you into the job. Again, these jobs are no different than your average narcissistic, wishy-washy, abusive relationship. You know, they do all of this. Oh, everything's great. Everything's grand. We treat our employers right. Look at all of our perks. And the problem with the perks is, and I've noticed a lot of American jobs do this, they highlight the perks, but the problem with the perks are you can't eat the perks. You can't pay your bills with the perks. You know, their whole, oh, look at how much PTO you guys get. Even though we barely pay you $1,000 every 2 weeks, so I don't know what vacation you're going to be able to afford when you're barely getting paid $2,000 a month. But hey, enjoy all the PTO that we're giving you. And again, PTO ain't getting me out of student loan debt. PTO ain't paying the utility bills and the rent. Okay? Because again, you're barely getting $2,000 a month, and you want somebody to be jumping up and down, catching the Holy Ghost, screaming hallelujah, when rent is, well, if I was to renew my lease at my current apartment, it would be $1,379 a month, and I'm barely making $2,000 a month. So I just want to put that into perspective when people want to talk about why in the USA people are, and it's not just in the USA, it's around the world in various countries and various continents. Okay? This is a global issue. But you're not paying people living wages. Again, what American jobs like to do is they want to sell you on these perks that ultimately don't matter in the long scheme of things, because it's like, again, you're barely making $2,000 a month at most of these jobs. Barely. And that's if you're lucky. That's a privilege in itself to even be able to say you're getting $1,000 every 2 weeks. Ain't that some shit? In this day and age, ain't that some shit? But that's how they do us. And you just be sitting there like, okay, but the perks. Now, the health insurance perks, again, is a hit or miss, because I done been through this ringer before with jobs. You know, you sitting up here, I've only had one decent paying job in my 12 years. Only had one in my 12 years of working. The vast majority of all of the jobs I've had are very low wages. Low wages, you're extremely underpaid, undervalued, and then you're overworked. That's another thing that American jobs love to do. You're hired in for a specific position, specific role, yet once you get hired in, you quickly realize that you're expected to be a floater, aka you're expected to fulfill many roles while only being paid for one position. Because again, this has happened to me numerous times. You get hired in for one position, yet you're expected to play all of these different roles, and also they want you to play all of these different roles without giving you adequate training in your position. But then they want you to attend all of these other trainings and webinars that, and just, it's a perk to be able to get education for free, training for free that you don't have to pay for. That is a privilege and a blessing. But what I've noticed in my current position now, I'm going to all of these webinars and trainings, but the vast majority of the webinars and trainings have little to nothing to do with my everyday role. And so then the things that you need to know about for your actual job, you don't know anything about. There's no trainings and webinars on that, but we can go and have you learn about A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, Q, R. We can have you go through all of this, but then stuff that you need to know to actually do your everyday role, you don't have training on. And you got to be sitting up, pulling things out the side of your ass and asking all of these questions, despite the fact that you've been here for 90 plus days. You would think, hello, it's been over 3 months. We should already have a good basis on what our day-to-day tasks are. But that's not the case, because you got us playing all of these different roles. And again, you're not paid for all this additional shit that you're doing that's outside of the job that you were hired for. And that's happened a lot with American jobs. I mean, it's horrible here. And it isn't one industry over the other. Like I said, I've worked with nonprofits. I've worked at for-profits. I worked in the financial mortgage industry. I worked in the political sector. I worked in grassroots organizing, community-based, retail, in higher education, college, universities, public schools. I done did a little bit of everything. And I'm here to tell you, it don't matter. This is how it is in the USA. As much as people like to talk about order and structure, these places don't have any order and structure, because if they did, the trainings would make sense to what you're going for, what your job is. And then I'm gonna say this: if y'all are such amazing employers, why do y'all have such high turnover rates? How come you're unable to keep any of your employees? And then what I don't understand is, every time I get a position, it seems like I'm always, regardless of the job. Now let me know in the description box below. I also want to know if you're comfortable and willing, with your consent, share your experiences working. What has it been like for you at these jobs in the comment box below? But yeah, it's just, what is this? And again, the wages are low and stagnant. Granted, I only have to be in office twice a week, but on the days that I'm in office, that's a 2-hour commute. Until I move back to the area, which I'm moving back this weekend. So that'll switch from being a 2-hour commute to a 30-40 minute commute on a day, on the 2 days that I have to go. So that helps me a lot. And it really puts things in perspective. I used to drive 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and sometimes Saturdays and Sundays at my previous job. And I was working overtime like crazy. But it puts things into perspective. Like, what is going on here? What we really wasted all this gas, wear and tear on your vehicle. Like I said, I just 2 weeks ago put $366 into my car to replace the rear brakes and rotors. Again, commuting is costly and timely. And a lot of these jobs, they do not pay us enough to commute. They don't. Because like I said, I'm barely making $1,000 every 2 weeks, and I got to come out of $366 for brakes and rotors. Again, you don't pay me enough to be out here commuting. You just don't. And I'm done feeling bad about how, it is what it is. Closed mouths don't get fed. And a lot of times, A lot of times with everything that's going on, we need to speak up about it, because we're so quiet about how we're treated in this country, about how these jobs are, and it just keeps up a toxic cycle, you know. So again, I just wanted to share my experiences, what I've been through, and then of course information will be in the description box below. And if you would like to share your experiences, what you've been through in these jobs, working, wages, the environment, feel free to provide that information if you want to, with your consent. And like I say all the time, do your own investigation and research. And if you would like to share your links and articles, please do so. Sharing is caring. But yeah, I'll probably do more videos discussing this in the coming future. So stay tuned. I'm out.